It's 5:02 p.m. So, want to say good evening to everybody. Thank you for joining our town hall meeting. Senator Sharon Moriwaki and I wanted to sponsor this town hall because we wanted to give the community an opportunity to hear more about development plans in Kakaako. We know that this is an issue that is usually top of mind for many Kakaako residents. And so we felt that it would be a good opportunity to hear directly from some panelists who have knowledge of the development plans. So at this point, I just want to turn it over to Senator Moriwaki to make some intros.
Thank you, Speaker. I too want to say that, you know, we have a number of new people moving into the district. So Speaker and I really felt this is a great opportunity for you to know a little bit more about HCDA, Hawaii Community Development Authority, that oversees pretty much Kakaako. And it's different because Kakaako is now under the state in a city jurisdiction. So you can see and Deepak Nupani is the executive director looking over zoning and how we build in Kakaako according to plan. And it really was to be a community that would have a mixed income, mixed density, all kinds of amenities for a community, for all of us to live in a community that we could live and work and also have the kinds of restaurants that we now have that we enjoy in our district. So I would like to introduce Deepak, who is the executive director of HCDA. And we've also asked the major landowners, and you'll see that in his presentation. We've asked him to give us an overview before we spend most of our time with your questions about not only HCDA, but the plans, what has been done, what is the future, and how you can provide input so that this can be our community and our neighborhood. And we've invited, I think through Deepak, Howard Hughes Corporation, which has a large share of the property in Kakaako, as well as Kamehameha Schools. And I see Serge, who will be available to answer any questions from Kamehameha Schools, and also Office of Hawaiian Affairs that owns some of the property on the Makai side of Kakaako. So without any more overview, I'm going to turn it over to Deepak, who can give us more specific information on what Kakaako is and what we've done so far and what we hope will be our community. Deepak?
Thank you, Senator Moriwaki and Speaker Saiki, for the opportunity to share what is happening in Kakaako, basically. So I have a very quick, very short PowerPoint just to provide an overview and a context, and then we can jump into Q&A. So see if I can get this started. Let me see. Share screen. Here. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you. So just providing a broader overview on the development authority as well as the Kakaako Community Development District. So let me start with
you're getting it, but nothing there yet.
The origin of Community Development District vision. I put a lot of stuff there, not going to talk through all of it. It's a lot to read. I put in a link in the bottom there. So for those who are very interested, you can go to that link and be able to read through the statute that created the vision for Community Development District within the state, all around the state. And by the way, I would be sharing, I'll email a copy of this PowerPoint to Speaker, your office, and to Senator, your office. So anyone who wants a copy can be emailed a copy.
Okay, thank you.
Then let me narrow down a little bit and go to the vision of Kakaako, Kakaako Community Development District. And keep in mind that this vision was created somewhere in the middle of the 70s, 1976, 77, long before my time at HCDA. And it's, you know, it's a wonderful vision that the legislature had back then to, you know, improve these areas in urban Honolulu. And again, I have a link there. You can look at the link with more detail. Then let me jump into what is it that we are talking about, the district. There's the district boundary, you know, and the, I don't know if everyone can read it, but, you know, we have color-coded and there are major landowners indicated in there. The portion of the district that's Mauka of Alamona Boulevard is the Kakaako Makai, as we call it. And the portion that is shown Makai of Alamona Boulevard, that's the Makai area, just for reference.
Can I, Deepak, can I add something to that, about that slide? Because, you know, there are some residents who may not know the exact history of HCDA Kakaako, but as Senator Moriwaki mentioned, Kakaako is the area that you see on the screen right now. This geographic area was carved out by the state legislature, you know, about 50 years ago to be under this jurisdiction of the state. So the development is under state jurisdiction. It is not under county jurisdiction. And that's why HCDA is really important. HCDA is basically the development arm or the regulator for this district that you see on the map. Okay, thanks,
Saiki, and just to add, I forgot to mention the downtown area, the Eco Power Plant in downtown is also under HCDA's jurisdiction. And let me add to what the speaker already said, the HCDA had zoning and land use powers within Kakaako Community Development District. But that said, it's still part of the city and county of Honolulu. So there's overlapping jurisdiction in certain areas and all. There is, you know, city and county of Honolulu has jurisdiction, you know, traffic tickets and things like that, you know, so to speak. Let me just give a very high level overview of, you know, the Kakaako plan and how it started. And back in '82, when the original Kakaako plan was adopted, the vision was to have podium and high rises with a 45 feet podium at 45 feet level. And then all the activity, all the pedestrian activity, communal activity to happen at that 45 feet level. The vision was that every single development within Kakaako would be connected through this bridge at 45 feet level. So, you know, what you can, those of you living in Kakaako have your podium. The original vision was that that podium would be connected and would be publicly available for the public to use. So anyone could walk into your podium and all. That's the vision. And with envision that, you know, I have some numbers there that at full build out, there would be a little bit over 47,000 people living in this community. There would be a total development of 36 million square feet, 19 million square feet of commercial, and 69,000 jobs. I have a small picture that I got from Google Earth that I thought I would put up there, and that shows some of the initial development in Kakaako. And guess what you don't see there? You don't see podiums connected through a bridge. And that happened, I think, naturally for a good reason, because each development was done by private landowners in their private property, and I believe there was a lot of reluctance for those properties to be connected with other properties where people that you don't know just walk into your podium. Practical reasons, I think, that vision of you know, 45 feet connection and then that acting as a pedestrian walkway for the whole district somehow didn't work. Given that, then starting probably a little bit before my time at HCDA, which started at 2005, HCDA went through a community process to amend the Mauka area plan. And I would like, the way I describe it is that it kind of brought that vision back down to street, had more emphasis on street level, having mixed use, pedestrian friendly environment and all. Basically some highlights. One of the key feature of the amendment was that there are no 45-foot podiums. And for those folks living in some of the older high-rise podiums, your development permit probably includes a requirement that you allow for a 45-foot degree connection, that 45-foot level connection in your building. Don't worry, it's not going to happen. That vision been dropped, and there's the new vision that was created in 2005. Well, it actually got adopted in 2011, and that gives you some sense of all the kind of discussion that HCDA went through with the public, with the stakeholders. It was a long process. So eventually, in 2011, the Mauka area plan amendment was adopted. It called for a street level connection, called for commercial uses at the street level, called for a pedestrian-friendly urban environment, and it's based on the concept of neighborhoods, corridors, streets, promoted mixed-use neighborhoods. I have some pictures there. And it called for a mixture of housing opportunities too.
Hey, Deepak, sorry, this is Scott. Since we're on that, can you go back to that slide on the Mauka area plan? The previous slide. I think there's some residents who may not be aware of what the Mauka area plan is. So that's the development plan for the area that's Mauka of Ala Moana Boulevard. Is that what the plan covers?
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay.
Saiki, that's the development plan for Mauka area, that's Mauka of Ala Moana Boulevard. And for anyone who is interested, I have our website address at the end of the presentation, and all of this material that I'm talking about, Mauka area plans, rules, and things I talk about, they're all on our website, and they're real easy to download. You can download and peruse through it if you want to, whenever it's convenient for you.
Okay, and Deepak, just to clarify, there's also a MAKAI area plan, right? Which is
there
for
is
the
a
area.
MAKAI area plan. That is correct, Speaker Saiki.
Okay, it's MAKAI of Ala Moana Boulevard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was going to come to that. I have a section on Kakaako Makai.
Okay.
Deepak, do you have a map of what are the different zones? Because there are zones. Are you still using the zones for like there's a industrial area in the Mauka side, as well as your plans for what can be developed in different zones? Is that still and maybe at least the Mauka plan, maybe you could just identify.
We do have maps,
Folks look at
but I didn't put a lot of maps. I wanted to keep the presentation fairly short. But to address that, and with the amended Mauka plan, the 2011 Mauka area plan, it calls for mixed. So industrial, retail, residential, and civic use, all of the uses are allowed everywhere within the Mauka district, Mauka area.
Yeah, and also then that as Speaker said, to identify what is the restrictions or the plan for the Makai side as well, because that's closer to the ocean, and you folks have a plan for that.
Yes, Senator Moriwaki. I will get to that a little bit later towards the end.
Okay, thank you.
Then let me jump into development itself, talk about little, I think the major development that's happening is with the two large landowners, Kamehameha Schools and Howard Hughes. And just the highlights of the master plan, Kamehameha Schools, Kaiaulu master plan calls for 2700 plus residential units, out of which they proposed 550 units to be affordable. And the current status of the development is that out of the 2,700 units, a total of 1,336 units have been developed in Kakaako, of which 456 units are affordable units. And out of those 456 units, 351 units are affordable rental units. And the commercial development is about 143,000 square feet. So basically the master plan, Kamehameha School's master plan is at maybe a little bit over 50%, around 50% development what they anticipated. Just a few months ago, Kamehameha School came to the board to amend the master plan and extend the timeline for the master plan. So they have another, I believe, the board extended it by another 10 years from their expiration. So they have until 2034 to complete all of the master plan development. And Serge, jump in if I missed something and you want to add anything.
Deepak, I think you pretty much covered it well. Yeah, we've got 5 more blocks to go that we're in planning stages right now. But thank you.
Sure, thanks, Serge. Then Ward Neighborhood Master Plan, that's for the land owned by Victoria Ward and now Howard Hughes Corporations. The original master plan proposed 4,300 residential units, out of which 860 were proposed as affordable housing units. So the current status is 2,136 residential units built, of which 525 are affordable units. And when I say built, I'm including Lee, which is already completed, but people haven't moved in the building. There are 856 units that are under construction between Koula and Victoria Place, 2 projects. You can see that, you can see the cranes construction is under construction. As of now, the board has, HCDA board has approved additional 1,243 units that have been permitted, of which 697 units are to be affordable units. And Howard Hughes has probably around 200,000 square feet of commercial use in, existing commercial that they had, plus some of the new commercial that was built. Part of the master plan, the grocery store and all of that. So that's just an overview of the 2 master plans and where they are at.
Deepak, before you go on, the question is which are affordable and what is the your now current rate of what is affordable? What is your definition of affordable?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. I think we are using affordable definition that's used by other agencies in the state, primarily the Affordable Housing Development Agencies, Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation. So it ties to area median income, and area median income, let me see if I can, probably can't stop, but if I have to talk in terms of AMI, it's 140% of AMI, which is the limit, anything below that. And if you look at the HUD published area income for county of Honolulu, give me a second, let me calculate. It's 100% number is $106,000 for a family of 4 for this year, for 2021. So 106,000 times 1.4 going up to 140% would be $148,400 for a family of 4. And that's a number that directly comes from Department of Housing and Urban Development. So
one more question, Deepak, for the residential units being built for sale. Are they all fee simple or are they leasehold?
All of the residential units, at my knowledge, all of the residential units, for sale units that are built are fee simple units. And Kamehameha Schools, as I said, has built quite a bit of rental units. So those are rental.
And before you leave the Mauka side, we have another question, two questions actually. Is HCDA responsible for road quality and other transit issues in Kakaako? And this relates to the city, the state within a city issue, for one. And number two, is HCDA working with HART to plan for the rail project as it works its way to Ala Moana Center? Maybe start with the road work by the city. And does HCDA play a role in that?
Yes, to some extent. I don't know if everyone knows that the majority of the roads in the district are owned by the city and county. And so it's like, even though HCDA has the planning and zoning jurisdiction, HCDA technically doesn't have jurisdiction over the roads. And most of the roads are owned by the county, and then county will make improvements in the roads. And there are some roads that are in controversy. They're privately owned and not privately owned. So, there is a flux on who actually owns some of the streets. And we are working with county and to some extent, Department of Transportation and sorting that out. And that's going to take time, but majority of the streets in Kakaako are owned by city and county. There are certain streets that HCDA has title to, and those are clearly owned by HCDA. I'll give you a good example. The Queen Street extension from Kamake Street going all the way to Ala Moana Boulevard. That portion of the street is owned by HCDA. The intent was to complete the street improvement and dedicate it to the city and county. That hasn't happened. So until it gets dedicated, HCDA would be owning the streets. And if you have any questions regarding that portion of the street, please do call HCDA. And we did get some requests, and we'll go fix things now. Coming to transit, yes, we do coordinate. When we receive development permit application for any of these developments, and all of this development permit application, whether it's from Howard Hughes or Kamehameha School, if they happen to be close enough to the transit stations, we consult with HART. We provide the information to HART, and we request HART to provide comments on those plans. And we also coordinate with HART on the guideway. In portions of Kakaako, as I said, Queen Street is a good example, owned by HCDA. HCDA owns a portion of Halekavila Street from Cook Street all the way to Ward Avenue. In those areas, we coordinate with HART and their construction for the guideways. So that is the level of coordination right now.
So again, but staying on the roads, and I guess we've opened the door on roads, but before we get to what you're doing with HART to plan for the rail project, one more question on the roads. Does HCDA have all the property lines? DOT does not know the property line on Ilani Y Street, where First Hawaiian Bank currently owns the property. Is that road HCDA's or DOT's or city? Where can they get information on that?
And that is a tough question to answer, Senator. I mean, as far as I know, I have never seen meets and bounds for any of the streets within Kakaako. And that, unless it's a modern subdivision, a newer subdivision, I don't think city and county has meets and bounds for any of the streets within Honolulu. the best information that I have found is the TMK map. Whatever is in the TMK is designated as a street is the street. I was talking to someone from Council Member Fukunaga's office, and from there found out, yeah, DOT is getting into some challenges on determining meets and bounds of the streets. One of the ways to look about it is that most likely each private property has its meets and bounds in their deeds. And one way of looking at it would be that anything that's outside of those meets and bounds adjoining the street is by default the meets and bounds of the street. And whether HCDA had created additional right-of-way taking, or the city and county had created additional right-of-way taking, then those are indicated in the TMK map. But as an overall meets and bounds, I don't believe city and county has it. HCDA certainly doesn't have meets and bounds, except for the property that's owned by, roads owned by HCDA. Then I believe, I would say I think we do have, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
So, so one more street problem, I guess a couple more, but in terms of Ala Moana Boulevard, that is a DOT highway, right? So someone is saying that the road or the highway is terrible in front of the ward developments. Almost as bad as Punch Bowl between Capitol and Honolulu Hale. Is that a DOT responsibility, or can they come to HCDA and you can talk to DOT to address problems on the highway, Ala Moana Boulevard, for example?
Ala Moana Boulevard is a state highway. So HCDA has no jurisdiction on Ala Moana Boulevard. It's all Department of Transportation.
Okay, so they have to go to DOT. They can't go, you can't be their emissary to it.
We can't be, it's Department of Transportation, and I think they have their own public information portal and all. So I would encourage everyone who has question on Ala Moana Boulevard to directly refer it to Department of Transportation.
So, so with the proposed 47,000 plus people living in or to be living in Kakaako, concern is how are you addressing traffic for these new residents? Is that HCDA and planning with the city? How are you proposing to go about looking at addressing traffic concerns for our community?
Yes, the traffic concern has been addressed. There are, each amendment of the Mauka area and also the Makai area plan, we have conducted traffic studies, identified improvements that needs to be made. And let me go to the next slide where I think gives some perspective. And give the big picture right now. Even though the plan back in '82 called for 47,000 residents, where we stand now after almost 50 years is that, and this is based on the data we had from 2019. I haven't been able to check the 2020 census data, but the most current information we have is that the population of Kakaako is about a little bit over 16,000. So it's still about a third of what was projected back in '82. And to answer the question of traffic, yes, the street network and then been analyzed for the full build out and, improvements and all been talked, been discussed in traffic studies and all. So And that's why some of the improvements were made. I mean, depending on how long you have lived in Kakaako, you remember that the Queen Street extension from Kamake to Ala Moana Boulevard didn't used to exist. That was all owned by private landowners, Victoria Ward being one of the major ones. And I remember, I mean, I moved to Honolulu in 2090, and I think it was early 1990, sorry, not 2090. And I remember early 90s that street being built. So improvements have been made where to clear traffic bottlenecks in several of the improvements that HCDA has made, and I think city and county is making similar improvements. And South Street was improved. So yes, I mean, the plan talks about, the mobility and takes care of that. So just throwing stats out there. The estimated population currently is around 16,000 people. In terms of investment, the state has made in Kakaako about $226 million. That's pretty significant over the long term. And the impact of that has been that there has been approximately $10 billion of construction investment in Kakaako. There was a report in 2015 published by DBID that provides some additional numbers and all. I have talked to DBID about updating that report, so they are working on that. Total housing is 12,589 units built since the Community Development District was formed, out of which 4,249 units are affordable, and out of that number, 1,380 are rental units at 30 to 60% of AMI, at the very lower end of AMI. And out of that 1,380, 489 units are dedicated to senior rentals. So there is a wide spectrum of housing within Kakaako. In terms of amenities, there's over 56 acres of park in Kakaako, because when the district started, I think Mother Walden Park was the only park within the district. Now there are, Waterfront Park and several smaller parks within the district.
Deepak, since you're on this slide, there's a question whether there will be industrial uses continuing in Kakaako or permitted in Kakaako. And
yes,
also who's...
Speaker Saiki, yeah, industrial use is permitted in Kakaako, anywhere.
Okay.
Will
Are there
that continue? Will
are-
that continue?
That will continue. I think that is, if you go back and look at the vision that the legislature had for Kakaako, it's very clear, states that industrial uses shall be permitted and continued within the district. And that's always been the vision of the authority to allow for industrial.
And also, is there a plan to develop Ohana Hale Marketplace?
Yes, I mean, since Howard Hughes is not here, I can just address on the permit. I believe the HCDA board approved for a project within that land parcel. That's the Park at Water, as it is called. So that parcel is for Howard Hughes has a development permit for that parcel.
Do you know if Howard Hughes will be helping helping the businesses that are displaced from Ohana Marketplace?
I would hope so. We require Howard Hughes or Kamehameha School or any developers to provide a plan for displaced businesses and how they are going to. And they have, I mean, similar to how they did with Ward Warehouse.
Does HCDA monitor that to make sure they do address the businesses that are displaced, finding other places, or helping them?
We do, Senator. Yeah. I mean, we did that with Ward Warehouse, and they did move some of the business to, what they call the South Shore Market, and to, I guess they call it Ward Center, right? The existing retail there, and also to some of, where the Ohana Market is. So they have, I mean, some businesses just can't afford to be in the district, don't want to be in the district, and they move out. And I believe, with Ward Warehouse, I think they hired a company to work with the businesses to, help them move and also.
Deepak, is HCDA, does it have jurisdiction over the sidewalks? There's some question of the sidewalks and whether you could require sidewalks, especially on major streets and industrial commercial areas, like on Queen Street, that, we can be more pedestrian friendly.
In all of the new developments, Senator, we require to have frontage improvement with sidewalk and all of that. That said, HCDA doesn't have jurisdiction over sidewalk. That's within the right of way of the street. And if the street is owned by county, then it's county's jurisdiction. But if I don't know if any of the residents have noticed, and this was an affordable housing art space along Waimanu frontage and Kamehameha frontage, we required the project to build sidewalk fronting the project. And similar to that on Kamehameha, and it's mostly on Kamehameha. There is a storage project that's going up on Kamehameha Street, kind of mid-block on Kamehameha between Ward and Cook Street, and HCDA is requiring that project to build its own sidewalk in fronting the project. But again, Kamehameha, the ownership is uncertain right now.
What is happening? I know it was frozen in time with the industrial district on Queen Street, Kamehameha. Is there any plan to assist the businesses there with sidewalks or with improvements of the street, or is that all under the city jurisdiction?
We had a long conversation, way back. I mean, this is going back maybe 10, 15 years actually, with the industrial business community within Central Kakaako, Kamehameha, Waimanu, Yelani Bai, Queen Street. Some of the challenges that a lot of these businesses are using the frontage, and in some cases for their business. A lot of these are repair shops, they park their car, and there is significant concern from these businesses that HCDA or city and county is going to come in and improve the streets and put sidewalks and all of that, and they end up losing their free parking.
But does HCDA have any view to, because part of the plan is to have a walkable, community that's more pedestrian friendly, to have these sidewalks, hard to walk on the streets in some of these areas.
Yeah, we had an ID project, and we have what is called the improvement district projects. And through that project over time, HCDA had improved sidewalks, drainage, sewer, water, and all of that. And I think, in the bigger scheme of things, that's still the plan. But that requires CIP funding from the legislature and working with the county and with the landlord and businesses. So, my perspective from HCDA side would be that if funding is provided, I think HCDA can do projects like that and make those improvements. And in the absence of that, we are requiring, developments to improve the frontage as they build the projects. Now, that's only a temporary solution, so to speak, because on a project by project basis, you really cannot require the project to improve drainage and all, because you can't just improve the drainage in front of your building, right? Drainage has to be improved for the whole length of the street and connected to existing drainages and things like that. So So yes, I mean, we have the plan in the books, we have an ID program, and the statute does allow for ID program, but I think the key element there is going to be, CIP funding.
Deepak, going back to Ohana Marketplace, there's a question on what is the timeline for the development of Ohana Marketplace? Or when will it start?
I have to take that question, Speaker. I don't have timeline from Howard Hughes. I need to ask Howard Hughes and if they have a timeline for that development.
Yeah, so unfortunately, Howard Hughes is not here tonight, but I think, Senator, we should maybe we should organize another town hall and invite Howard Hughes. I think there will be a lot of questions about the Howard Hughes developments, so we can plan that for the future.
Is anybody on from Howard Hughes? No? Yes, okay, then, yeah, we should have, because there are a number of questions that relate to what they're developing. Yeah. Going back to affordable housing, Deepak, do you have a breakdown of the affordable housing availability? I know that's by developer, but does HCDA keep a monitor? For example, what percentage are 60% AMI, 70%, all the way up to 140% AMI would be something that the public would like to know.
Senator, let me try to understand. Availability meaning if there are affordable housings available for rent or for
rent or for sale, but I think 60%, 70% AMI only relates to rentals.
Yes, as far as I know, on rental, there is no vacancy. I have talked to, the operators of affordable housing units in Kakaako. There is a long waiting list on all of the projects. And as you know, there are 1,380 units, except for one project. It's that I know of, that's owned by HCDA and operated by HCDA. We have maybe we may have a handful of a studio that are available, and that's the Honuakaha project. But it's a elderly rental project, so you have to qualify in terms of age and income and all for that project. For that, we have vacancy. We may have 4 or 5 studio units that are available. Apart from that, in some of the buildings, I have the pictures up there, Art Space, Kevalo, Nohona Hale, they all have long wait list for units.
Does your website have all of these listed so someone could just go to the website and see, okay, Art Space or Kauhale, Kakaako, or wherever you might have different units? Is that, is there one place they can go and find out availability?
We may not have that level of information, Senator, but that's something to think about and put it on our website. We do have a page for reserved housing and affordable housing, but I'm not sure exactly the level of detail that we have on that. I believe we may have a contact for operators of this, so that anyone coming to our site can click and go to that website for that particular project and find the details.
So people are saying there's a failure to provide truly affordable housing. You're going back to 140% AMI for your for sale units. Is there anything that HCDA can do to expand the affordability of units? MAS Schools, right, Serge, has been trying to do more, but what can we do so that we have this mixed income community that was envisioned?
Yes, Senator, there are plans, and I'm glad that you mentioned Kamehameha Schools. When Kamehameha School came back to the board to amend his master plan, one of the requests from Kamehameha School was to be able to use an affordable housing tool that our sister agency HHFDC has. That is what is normally called the 201H38 provision, where the developer can ask for exemption from certain rules and statutes for providing 50% plus 1 unit in the development as affordable housing development. And the board did approve that. Within HCDA, the board is looking at a couple strategies for developing more affordable housing, more focus being more on rental and at the lower end. And using the example that we did for Nohona Hale is a good example, using that strategy, making land that HCDA owns available for this type of developments. Also, in the past several months, the board approved paying of equity sharing out front, because until now you couldn't pay your HCDA share of equity in your unit until you sold the unit. Now you can make an application to pay it out front without having to sell your unit. And the strategy that the board has is that any funding that's raised through that paying of equity will go directly into investing into affordable housing projects. And we have worked, there's a history of HCDA working with HHFDC in creating affordable housing. So we are reviving that strategy. And if you look at the 3 projects that I put up there, and Art Space, that was a joint project between HHFDC and HCDA. And it's a project that's a rental project at 60% of AMI. So is Hale Kipalo. It's a rental project, 128 units, 60% and below of AMI, and Nohona Hale too. And in all 3 of these projects, I believe 10% of the units are set aside for a family with an income of below 30% of AMI. And 30% of AMI for, I think, a household of 1 in Honolulu is about $24,000 a year. So that reaches down to the very, very low. So we have a lot of that focus. Another area that the board is looking at would be to, and this is what I'm hearing from the developers, is that they need more entitlement, more density, so they can build more units. And right now that's limited. So we will be coming out, we'll go through community vetting, community consultation process on, providing additional density if the developer is willing to put in higher number of affordable housing. So providing that as an incentive.
Deepak, I'm thinking we should let you finish your PowerPoint.
Yeah.
We're running out of time.
We can come back to these questions,
Yeah,
but why don't you finish first, and then we'll come back to more questions.
Thank you, Senator Moriwaki and Speaker Saiki. So I'm almost to the, I think next is, I believe now I have focusing on Kakaako Makai. Kakaako Makai, as the name says, is the Makai area, and I have a map there. So all the land parcel, that's an old map. Since that map was created, the boundaries have changed a little bit, and you can refer to the earlier map that I saw that has more accurate boundary. So for the Makai area, there is the Kakaako Community Development District Makai area plan, and there is the Kakaako Community Development District Makai area administrative rules. And as for the Mauka area, HCDA has planning, zoning, and land use oversight for projects in Kakaako Makai. So whether it's, only 3 major landowners, Kamehameha School, OHA, and the state itself, HCDA itself. So anyone doing a project in Kakaako Makai needs a development permit from the HCDA. And even though I didn't put it there, let me emphasize that currently there is a prohibition in the statute not allowing residential development in Kakaako Makai. I just wanted to make that clear for everyone in the audience. A lot of people know, but some people may not know. Then in addition to that, the authority has 2 policy documents. The first one is the Kakaako Makai Area Conceptual Master Plan that was created with a lot of outreach and consultation with the community. It took several years to create that. And that's the map on the upper portion of my PowerPoint. And it shows the conceptual development that the community went through. The second one on the lower part of the screen is was developed again a number of years ago. That was the Makai Area Park Active Use Master Plan. Now the park has gone over to the city and county. It would be up to the city and county to see if it wants to follow this plan and make these improvements in the park. HCDA at this point can't make any improvements because it is not the landowner of those parks anymore. Then let me just flash this, it's too small to read. Just going back to the conceptual master plan, there were 14 guiding principles that was, working with the community. HCDA adopted these 14 guiding principles as the development guiding principles for the Makai area. And this can be found on our website. So there's a link in the website. You do a search for Makai Area Conceptual Master Plan, you can find it. Then in 2012, the legislature transferred certain parcels within Kakaako Makai to OHA. So this is a map. It's taken from a presentation that OHA had, and because it had a very good delineation of the parcels that went to OHA. So those parcels, they're numbered and colored, belong to OHA, and I believe OHA is working on a development plan for those parcels. Then let me quickly get into the development in Kakaako Makai. As you know, that there is medical school and cancer research center of University of Hawaii, two of the major developments. Then, thanks to the legislature, HCDA received some funding in the past few years to renovate the historic pump station. It has been renovated and it's leased for a nominal $1 a year by a nonprofit entity that works with kupunas. And then again, thanks to the legislature and some EDA grant, we were able to help a sister agency, Hawaii Technology Development Corporation, in developing the sandbox. And the purpose of the sandbox is to facilitate, I think it's part of the broader new economy concept where upcoming high-tech technology development and that kind of that's happening in the Makai area. And I didn't put it on the slide. The harbor, Kewalu Basin Harbor, is managed by Howard Hughes through a lease with HCDA. There are no development plans on the HCDA lands. HCDA doesn't own much land in that area. The park has been dedicated over to the city and county. There are no development proposals as of now. And that concludes my presentation. I have the website there, link to it. And as I said earlier, I'll make a copy of this presentation available to Speaker's office and the Senator's office, and it can be emailed to anyone who is interested. With that, well, it's almost 6 o'clock. We have half an hour for Q&A. Senator, you are muted.
Just to clarify the plan, so there is a plan, and you've developed some of the properties that the state owns. So what is the process now for, say, OHA or some of the other landowners? Kamehameha Schools has property there. It has to come before HCDA. Is that correct?
That is correct, Senator. Any development in Kakaako Makai, as long as it's within the district, needs to come to HCDA for approval.
And no plans have yet been submitted.
We haven't received development permits from either OHA or Kamehameha schools for any development in Kakaako Makai. I mean, for Kamehameha school, we may have received some permits for they own property, so they're probably renovating some properties. So those are just minor renovations of the buildings they own. Apart from that, there hasn't been any permit for new development in the Makai area.
So since Serge is on, Serge, you have any plans for your properties on Makai?
Quite frankly, we're so busy focusing on the Mauka side of Ala Moana Boulevard that Makai lands are kind of no plans. It's existing uses are as they go on, and a lot of those, we have 4 blocks there, and a lot of those blocks are under leases that tie them up for the next 5 to 10 years anyway. So nothing in the near future.
Mm-hmm.
There's a question on what is the status of the future phases of the Lot C parcel that includes the sandbox?
Yeah, thank you, Speaker. It is slated for, we developed a master plan when we built sandbox for HCDA. It just looks at civic usage. I think one of the things that in the master plan is a parking structure for a medical school and the cancer center. I mean, that's been in the, we had conversation with University of Hawaii as well as the legislature for several years now. As you know, that the medical school just has that surface parking, and they are on kind of a temporary year-to-year basis, sort of permit with HCDA. And HCDC at one point had thoughts about putting their headquarters in that district. So it's mostly related to tech development and that kind of thing. And also DBID been looking at, and DBID and university, I'm not quite sure what the status is that on a cable, the high-speed internet cable landing in that area.
Mm.
So, but basically there is no concrete plan. I think conceptually we had worked on some of the development that could go in the Makai area, but mostly in that parcel civic related development that supports medical schools, supports the technology sector in the state, and a parking garage to serve the medical school and cancer center and any development that may end up going in that area.
Deepak, going back to Kakaako Makai, there's a question whether there's development plans for Ward Center.
Ward Center is in the Mauka area.
Right.
Yeah, Mauka.
Yeah, I mean, in the master plan, eventually there is a plan for improvement of Ward Center. But Howard Hughes hasn't come to the authority with a specific plan for that parcel. And my understanding is that it is probably going to be one of their last piece of development.
Okay, so that would be a high-rise tower that's about 415 feet, 435 feet.
I believe the master plan rendering does show a high-rise residential tower on that lot.
Okay, thanks.
Talking about green space, what is the open space parks located on your screen share? I think you showed green areas, but how much, and you said there were 56 acres of parkland. Is that all we have, or are there others proposed, and are you working with the developers on keeping our green space open, both Mauka and Makai?
The answer is yes, Senator. I mean, there's 56 acre of park right now, and that's a very large number in a small area. And that's it. We have facility, community facility dedication fees that is collected, and the board's strategy is to purchase land for pocket parks and things like that. And with each development, the developer is required to provide public spaces within their development. And some of these parks are going, like the park that the ward is creating is going to be privately owned, but has a perpetual easement for public use. So it's open to the public. It cannot be closed. But then Howard Hughes does the, or Victoria Ward does the maintaining of the park, and the state or the county doesn't have to fund maintaining these parks.
But you are adding more park space then, or open green space in the district?
We are looking at doing that. I mean, we are looking at purchasing land to add more park. And these are not going to be used park because there isn't a lot of, big parcels to be bought. And even if we had the money, it would be very expensive because land in Kakaako is getting fairly expensive now. But we are looking at the opportunity to create pocket parks. The good example would be park next to Imperial Plaza. There is a small park next to Imperial Plaza. Or another example is a small park next to Koolani, which is heavily used by the residents in that area. So we are always looking at opportunities creating those kind of parks.
We have a question for Serge. So Serge, is Kamehameha School still on target to break ground on the next residential tower at the end of 2023 on Ala Boulevard next to SALT? Has that permit already been approved by HCDA?
No permit has been approved or even submitted. We are talking to a developer for that block. My guess is it would probably be a little bit later than 2023, maybe 2024. Not sure exact timing. Still very early stages. Plans haven't been finalized for that block, but obviously would need to go into DPOC and HCDA for approvals and things of that nature once the developer moves forward on that. So still a little ways away.
All right, thanks.
We have a question, Deepak, on Point Panic, and who owns it? Is that OHA controlling it, or the city is part of Kakaako Waterfront Park? How do we make it more accessible and useful? What plans are there for that?
Now the park we are talking about on the Eva side of Eva side of Harbor and Point Panic. There's a sliver of land that is park at Point Panic, and that went over to the city and county. So city and county is responsible for access and maintenance of that area.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so we have a question. How many pending building permits have been submitted to HCDA? Development permits. How many are pending?
Let me, understand. I believe the question is how many development permits, because HCDA doesn't issue building permits, it's city and county. Right now in Kakaako, we don't have any pending development permits.
Okay. And then the other question is, what is the status of the pedestrian bridge from Ward Village to Kewalo Basin?
I think that's a Howard Hughes question.
Yeah.
Or DOT. I believe it is DOT who is constructing the bridge. And we gave DOT all the easements that was necessary for the construction. So let me check with DOT and where they are in the construction schedule. If I remember correctly, I thought they were going to start in July, August timeframe, but obviously they haven't started. So let me check with DOT and I can provide that information.
Good.
And Speaker Saiki.
The next one is a Serge question, I think. What is planned to improve Cook Street to make it more pedestrian friendly? Was to plant trees? Is that HCDA, or is that, I thought that was Kamehameha Schools working on that promenade? Or am I incorrect? Is it HCDA?
No, it's something that Kamehameha Schools will do as part of our blocks, the 4 blocks at Front Cook Street between Po'ukaina and Ala Boulevard. There is a 40-foot setback from the curb, the street, to the building face. So sidewalks will be anticipated to be very wide, and looking at doing some heavy landscaping there. So it's, you know, very pedestrian friendly. There's a fair amount of shade, and trying to make that thoroughfare as pleasant as possible.
What is the timeline on that?
That would occur because if you notice on Cook Street now, a lot of those buildings go up almost all the way to the street, and then there's a pretty limited sidewalk. So it's going to happen as those blocks get redeveloped. So over the next, you know, few years, so it's going to take a little while, because it doesn't really make sense to tear down existing buildings and displace existing tenants to put that in and then redevelop the blocks. We'd like to do it all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
There's a question on this is the First Hawaiian Bank project. What parcel will First Hawaiian Bank build on at Ward and Ilanivai? And the concern is that there are already homeless people who are congregating in that area.
I can pass that information over to First Hawaiian Bank Speaker Saiki. First Hawaiian Bank hasn't come to HCDA for any development permit. But when I was at HHFDC managing, handling the development side of that agency, I did have contact with First Hawaiian Bank, and they had talked about a plan for building an affordable housing project on that site. But they haven't come to HCDA, so I can pass on the information to First Hawaiian Bank that there is homeless camping there and they need to take care of it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Deepak, I don't know if HCDA is requiring this of the developers, and Surge, maybe Kamehameha Schools is already thinking about this. I know that the concern has been on climate change and sea level rise, and how is that being considered in your development? You know that Howard Hughes had mentioned they're going to build higher, but I don't know what that means. And whether HCDA is requiring it or the developers are already thinking more forward-looking on their developments. Serge or...
Let me take that, Serge, and you can add. I believe based on, I don't know whether it was sea level rise or a number of other elements, NOAA did increase the flood elevations in the district. And, all of the core development have to follow that flood elevation maps. And that did increase the original flood elevation, the old flood elevation map by around 3 feet. And when you look at the flooding pattern, it appears that the area that's Diamond Head of Ward Avenue is most flood prone than the Eva side. And I have looked at Chip Fletcher's model for sea level rise and all of that. And because of the Makai area park, the mounds, a lot of the area that's Kamehameha's land is not that prone to flooding because, sea level rise, tsunami, all of that gets blocked by the parks. That said, there is no specific sea level rise plan for Kakaako. And partly because it doesn't make sense to have a sea level rise plan for just one small district. I think it needs to be planned holistically. I have talked to Office of Climate Change. Looks like the city and county is working and coming up with a comprehensive strategy to deal with how to handle sea level rise. And any sea level rise plan has to go hand in hand with the whole district. So that is part of the fact that we are facing that, and because of that, we don't have any specific plan for Kakaako district. That said, when we did the EIS for Kakaako in 2015, we did bring up sea level rise issues in the EIS.
So what is the long-term view from HCDA in working with developers on small or big for Kakaako? looking at what the
Looking at the
are.
floodplain maps, floodplain elevation, Senator, and also the model from SOES, sea level rise and all, it's going to be mostly streets and infrastructure that are bigger issues than the buildings themselves. The buildings are going to be at a higher elevation. I think the challenge is to, as sea level rise happens, as groundwater table comes up, how do we handle it? I mean, you know, there's I believe Climate Change Commission's report recommendation was engineering solutions and selective retreat. How that gets implemented, still up in the air, I guess. I think neither the state nor the city has come up with a specific plan on how do we do this.
Just to add, I know that on the blocks that the Kamehameha Schools owns and is looking at on the Mauka area, we are looking at raising the elevations of those blocks to accommodate sea level rise in accordance with the flood zone map. So that's something that we're talking to the developers that we're talking to about addressing it that way.
Yeah, as I said, you know, the buildings are going to be higher, but that doesn't solve the problem by itself, right? The streets are going to get flooded, and your infrastructure system is going to get flooded. So it's a big undertaking, and I think it needs to be, you know, maybe Office of Planning at the state level, and then city and county, you know, has to take the lead rather than a small agency like HCDA.
We have a question, Deepak, on the status of the Office Max site. Is that going to be developed?
I think that question more to Serge. That's Kamehameha property, and I believe Kamehameha School is working with a developer on developing that property.
Yeah, at some point it will get redeveloped, but we've got no formal plans yet, and no development program yet. Still working with the developer on discussions on that one.
Okay.
Deepak, I want to go back to HCDA and what you're doing with HEART to plan for the rail project. Does HCDA, as you know, as you work toward it going down Halikuila, going to Ala Moana Shopping Center, if that happens, what is the relationship between HCDA and HEART? How might the community get involved if, in fact, there are developments along the rail line in Kakaako?
We coordinate, Senator, with HEART on development applications. If there is a development on a parcel that's going to be adjacent to the train, either guideway or station, then we consult with HEART and ask for their feedback.
You know, one of the things, for example, Deepak, if it's coming down Halikuila rail and there's a transit stop, how might the community get more involved in planning for what that stop looks like? I guess in other communities, they have had an advisory group or some group from the community looking at what that would look like. Is that something in the offing with HCDA leading the charge on that with HEART?
Right now, we are not leading the charge, Senator. I mean, the guideway, the train is HEART's project, and as I understand that HEART has gone through community consultation process in there when they build a particular transit station or planning a transit station. To mine, I can't remember, and to my knowledge, I don't think HEART has done any community consultation on transit stations within the Kakaako Development District.
That's something to keep.
So something to keep in mind, and even where HEART is right now, I'm not sure how willing or prepared they are to come and talk about those kind of things.
Here's a specific question on housing. For those of us in Keiki-Lahana, are we able to participate in future affordable housing lotteries for larger units, like some of the later affordable projects can? Would we be able to purchase a 2-bedroom when we currently have a 1-bedroom, or is it just available to newer projects? Maybe you can clarify what that means, Deepak.
Yeah, the short answer there, Senator, is yes. There is provision in the rule that if you are an owner of reserved housing and, say, you bought it when you were single or you were just married, now you have 2 children, and now you want to move into a bigger property, then you can make a request and you can apply for a newer reserved housing unit, that came up on market. Yes, you can.
Can I just jump in real quickly and just I want to thank Deepak and the city board for recently approving amending their rules to allow reserve unit owners to be eligible for second mortgages and other other kinds of financing. Previously, under the rules, they were not able to do that, but with this rule change, the reserve unit owners will now have that opportunity, like all other residential owners, to apply for these kinds of programs. So I want to just thank HCDA for working on that.
Yeah, thank you, Speaker Saiki, for bringing that up. Let me add that we have created a new information on our webpage for that. So anyone who is looking into getting a second mortgage, you can go to our website, go to that page and get the details and it explains exactly how to make a request and the document requirements and all of that.
Okay. There's a question about the school at Mother Rosalind Park. What is the status of that?
Yeah, I don't believe there has been any change in the status since I think I responded to that question at the mayor's town hall meeting. I believe DOH, I guess, getting reorganized. I think last year or the previous year, there was this new agency that was created for school development. And I'm hoping that, they'll have a plan. I understand that HSFDC is working with a developer and school, developing an elementary school on that site is still part of that plan, I believe, but I don't believe there is any concrete steps been taken to develop that school right now.
Okay. There's a question also for high rises. Is there still a rule that the high rises be built in a Mauka Makai orientation?
Yes, Speaker, and I have to qualify that. In the current Mauka area rule, it says Mauka Makai orientation. In the 2005 rules and the 2 master plans, Kamehameha Schools and Howard Hughes' master plans fall under the 2005. It specifies an orientation that's a little bit flexible than just Mauka Makai.
Deepak, how is HCDA holding Howard Hughes accountable for defects in their standards? For example, they bring up Keiki-Lahana so that it doesn't happen in other buildings. Is HCDA holding the developers for and accountable for their developments? Safety issues, I suppose, fire and safety issues.
Construction and safety issues, Senator, are mostly regulated by the city and county building department. It's part of the building permit. HCDA regulates the planning and land use. So as such, HCDA doesn't have any statutory authority to regulate construction defaults and things like that.
So what does an owner or a tenant have to do? Go to the city planning department or city design and construction? Would you know?
I believe
recourse do they have?
I would start with building department at the city and county. And if there are construction defects, then I think I would start with the Department of DCCA, Consumer Protection. You know, that agency has, I believe, the authority to regulate some of that. HCDA doesn't have authority to regulate any of that.
Here's one that Keiki Lohana, again, holding Howard Hughes accountable, might be related to what you're saying, but why did HCDA reject with a 5-1 vote the petition from the owners to hold Howard Hughes accountable for their underestimated maintenance fees and Howard Hughes failing to deliver the homes meeting affordable guidelines?
AG has advised me not to, not to provide a response for a legal type questions, Senator, because I believe Keiki Lohana has appealed the board's decision to Supreme Court.
Okay.
So I am not able to respond to that.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Let's see. I think we've covered all.
Just a general question of whether HCD will allow Howard Hughes to build more projects. It's more of a general question.
Yeah, the answer to that, Speaker, is that whatever was proposed in the master plan, I believe by right, Howard Hughes can build all of that. Anything beyond that is not covered under the master plan. So if they have additional entitlement that they think they have to come back to the board for approval on all of that. But within the master plan, whatever density they were allowed within the master plan, they can max it out.
Okay. I think that might be a good way to kind of end our town hall meeting. I think we have a hard stop at 6:30, and it's a good topic to end on because I think, Senator, maybe next, as I mentioned, we should organize another town hall and invite Howard Hughes to present, because I think there are a lot of questions about Howard Hughes projects.
We could have the landowners who weren't here. OHA, I think, is in the audience as listening, but hopefully the next time around we could have Howard Hughes in one and then look at the Makai in another session. That would be helpful, I think, for people to see what Kakaako is all about. So,
can I just, before you close, Senator, can I just say I want to thank Deepak for presenting tonight. I think Deepak is, one of the most knowledgeable and communicative directors we've had in a while. And so I really appreciate that. And I also want to thank Serge for being here as well to take up questions about the Kamehameha Schools projects.
And thank you to our audience.
And to our audience.
Yeah, with the questions that we learned a lot too.
And
absolutely.
Saiki and Senator Moriwaki, if there are any remaining questions from the audience, and you can email it to me, I can provide response to that. And that's it with the, audience. We have the contact email on our websites. Anytime you have questions, you can directly send it to HCDA. And our communication director, Craig Nakamoto, is participating in this meeting and all, and we make every effort to respond to any questions that the general public has in Kakaako. So with that, thank you very much for the opportunity. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
I have to run to the airport now to pick up my wife.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.